So I'm Glenys Currie, and I'm the current chair of the Hamilton Committee Against Abuse of Older Adults. This committee is a committee of the Hamilton Council on Ageing. So this committee has been around for many years and is made up of many community agencies who work with older adults on a day-to-day basis. The World Health Organization probably has the most definitive definition of what abuse of older adults actually is, and I'm just going to read that to you. And it's defined as a single or repeated act or lack of appropriate action occurring in any relationship where there is an expectation of trust that causes harm or distress to an older person. And the really important piece in there is this sort of violation of a trusting relationship. And so the abuser can be anybody in a person's life. It can be a family member, it can be a friend, it can be a neighbour, it can be a professional caregiver. So really anybody that an older adult comes in contact with could potentially abuse that person. Any older adult can become a victim of abuse, regardless of gender, race, ethnicity, or income. So there are many types of abuse of older adults. There's physical abuse, emotional abuse, there's neglect, there's self-neglect. But the most prominent form of abuse of older adults is financial abuse. And latest numbers are saying that approximately 60,000 older adults in Canada are victims of financial abuse in any 1 year, which is a considerable amount of people. And when people think of financial abuse, I think people tend to think about scams, people calling up and pretending to be a person's grandchild asking for money, or somebody coming door to door and trying to sell something to an older adult or a service. But actually one of the main types of financial abuse is the abuse of a power of attorney. And that's why it's so important then when people are actually getting their power of attorney that it's with somebody that they trust. So that's a very important thing for people to know. Another area of abuse of older adults that's gaining prominence is actually bullying by older adults to older adults, and that's an area of abuse that's really coming into prominence at the moment. And it's not just young people that bully each other. We are seeing an increase in the number of older adults that are abusing older adults. So it probably would surprise many people to know that approximately 10% of the population of older adults are a victim of abuse of older adults at any one time. So if you think of the population of Ontario, where 1.5 million older adults live, approximately 150,000 people then would be a victim of elder abuse. So that's quite a large number. And if we want to bring it down to a sort of more local level, Catholic Family Services of Hamilton, which are funded to provide help and services to older adults who have been victim of abuse, currently see approximately 800 cases of elder abuse in a month. So that's really a local kind of statistic. But I think what's important to know that is about 80% of all cases of abuse and neglect go unreported. So the number is probably much greater than the number I've just mentioned there. And there are many reasons why older adults are reluctant to tell people that they are being abused. And some of those that they're just embarrassed, they're ashamed, they don't want to admit it to themselves. Also, it could be that they're just in denial, that really they are not being abused, and they just don't want to admit it to themselves. But another reason is that older adults may not report that they are victims is because they're afraid of what might happen as a consequence. So if they're having to report that a caregiver or a family member is abusing them, maybe financially or physically, what might happen to them if they actually report it. So there's several reasons why abuse of older adults is so underreported in Canada. So how would somebody identify that somebody they knew might be experiencing some elder abuse? And some of the things that you could look for in a friend or a neighbour or someone that you know. So a person could be depressed or fearful. They could be anxious or passive. There could be some social withdrawal, not going out, not wanting to see people maybe. They may have some bruises, or they may be, their homes may be neglected. They may be embarrassed about their appearance, so they withdraw. Unexplained physical injuries, obviously, a bruise that is seen or a cut, that might indicate that they've been abused. Lack of food or clothing or other sort of necessities, if they're being financially abused, maybe they can't afford to buy these things. Changes in hygiene and nutrition, that's another side. And failure to meet financial obligations. So if you have someone who's always paid their rent on time and all of a sudden the rent's not being paid, that could mean that maybe they've been a victim of financial abuse. And unusual bank withdrawals. So if a person has given a power of attorney to someone, which then gives them the right to go to the bank and make withdrawals, and somebody noticed that very large amounts or regular amounts which aren't as the usual patterns, that could be a sign that that person is being abused as well. And there are ways that individuals can protect themselves from being abused, and one of them is to be socially connected, to keep as connected as you can, to stay active and involved, get to know your neighbours, so people are looking out for some of the signs I just mentioned. Plan for your future and where you want to live. When you're doing your power of attorney, make sure the power of attorney is someone that you really trust, because once you've signed that power of attorney, you're giving over a lot of control to that individual. And most importantly, assert your right to be treated with respect and dignity like everyone. So what if you do, or what if you feel that you are being abused, or you think you know someone that's being abused? What are some of the things that you could do to actually help that person or help yourself? Well, if it's an emergency, so if you think someone is at that moment being physically hurt or is being financially abused, then you can always call 911. So in an emergency, that is always a thing that you do. But if you don't think it's an emergency and you don't want to call 911 and you don't think they're in risk of imminent harm, then talk to that person. Gain their trust. See what's going on in their life. And if possible, give them some information about resources that they can contact when they're ready. This isn't something that you can force somebody to do. You haven't got the right to say to someone, you must report it. You can only be there to support them and encourage them when the time is right to make that report. So some of the ways that we can prevent abuse, the main way to prevent abuse is education, is to inform people about it. It's one of those sort of really hidden things that people don't want to talk about. So it's very important that people are educated, and that is one of the key pieces that the Committee Against Abuse of Older Adults does. We go out, we do presentations, we inform people and groups about what abuse of older adults really is. So that's a really important piece. So awareness of what elder abuse is. And I think if I want to kind of leave you all with one message, is that abuse for older adults is never right. It is never acceptable or excusable. So,